Oh, my washing's getting weird. Hello all of you little demons, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, back again with another episode of the awesomely named and awfully hosted Choose Your Own Adventure, the weekly medieval themed format where I, the crown Jules of WhatCulture.com, take a list chosen by you. Yes, you, the person who spent 8 hours painting a model, only to drop it the other day and smash it into pieces. Love Mondays, me! Yes, you get to decide what list I dole out to you each and every week. And this week we have none other to thank than Justin Wynn for their suggestion of video game narratives that are so confusing and complex that nobody bloody understands what's going on. And this is the thing. When it comes to video games nowadays, we definitely have moved towards a more cinematic approach. That means that we've basically got loads of narratives that are convoluted, complex, tons of plot, little devices and narratives that are going on that are interweaving into one story that could bludgeon you to death with, and that is, for the most part, a good thing, as it helps with player immersion and helps us see things through to the end, but sometimes some games just disappear up their own arse. I'm looking at you, Hideo Kojima. Of course he's on this list, so let's get on with it today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video game narratives so convoluted and confusing that nobody understands them. And say hi to me here in the live chat, and put your suggestions for next week's episode down in the comments section below. Now with that, let's get on with this list, shall we? Indeed we shall. Number 8, Final Fantasy 13-2. So the Final Fantasy games have often had narratives that are so deep you could bloody drown in them, and for the most part they wield these tales of fighting and fantasy pretty aptly. I mean, they do have a few plot holes here and there, but they have enough confidence to see things through to the end. But that's not to say that they haven't stumbled a fair few times. In fact, occasionally they don't just stumble as much as they do faceplant so hard that they leave an imprint of their gormless face in the bloody cement. Final Fantasy 15 infamously held a lot of its own narrative in a 2-hour movie that most fans didn't even bother to watch, and Final Fantasy 13 took an idea that was simple on paper and made it so arduous to understand that many fans switched off long before the game actually became any good. But it's Final Fantasy 13-2 that takes the piss and cake when it comes to convoluted narratives. The reason why it's so taxing on the mind is that it takes all of the Square Enix twists and turns and then adds in time travel to the mix. Or should I say terrible time travel that doesn't even follow its own logic half the time. The plot, in a very simplistic manner, is that Lightning, the protagonist from the previous game, has been all but erased from existence thanks to a time paradox, and now her sister and new boy Noel have to travel through time correcting mistakes, kind of like a Hot Topic time cop. Now that sounds great, right? Fixing the wrongs of the timeline, but here's the problem. When your narrative is concerned with fixing mistakes in the timeline, that means your entire narrative gameplay experience is about fixing mistakes that don't make sense. You've based a narrative on something that doesn't make sense. So how the hell are you meant to follow it? Number 7, Rule of Rose. Now, it's a pretty common storytelling trope that if you want your audience to engage with your narrative, then you have to make sure that 2 things are present, that they happen in a chronological order, and if they don't happen in a chronological order, that you make it clear to the audience that this is a change in perspective or indeed time. Rule of Rose, however, does not give a single toss about these things. This psychological horror game for the PS2 may well be regarded as an undersung hero by many today thanks to its genuinely creepy atmosphere and setting, but its plot is delivered in such a disconnected manner that trying to connect the dots may well be the thing that haunts your nightmares at the end of it. After playing this game, I felt like Charlie in the mailroom in that scene from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, just trying to connect the dots and figure out who Pepe Sylvia was. But it was just maddening because the game would just be like, oh, silly you thought that just because I showed you a cutscene with characters interacting in this particular location at this particular time, that you thought that was the truth. We've all made that mistake, right? I'm sorry, what? What are you doing to me? Why are you trying to give me an aneurysm while playing this game? I've just witnessed it happen, and now you're telling me it's not happening? Calm down, Jeremy, it's the wrong format for you. On top of all of this are the details hidden in collectibles, and even within the game's manual, all of which need to be understood and reevaluated constantly. It is draining work to try and piece this all together, and it's made even worse by the fact that fans decided to make a website trying to connect all the dots and put things in a chronological order, and then spent the next few years arguing amongst themselves over which was the correct order. No one knows, and at this point, no one even has any answers. Number 6, pathologic. If there is a question that I dread more than "Sir, why is there dog blood over your shoes?" it is, so what's pathologic about? Because I will be sweating bullets as I try and figure out which part of this ball of yarn to start pulling at first. I guess you could begin by stating that the plot both does and very much does not make sense at all. Focusing on a remote town that is experiencing a rather nasty dose of Nurgle's blessings, it's your job to stop the spread of this plague while also uncovering its origins and why many of the townspeople seem so very, very odd. The problem is, though, is that the game clearly wants you to achieve none of these things by making everything you do as difficult as possible. The combat is utterly woeful. The characters that you meet, they speak like they're ripping dialogue straight from a school production Shakespearean theatre thing, and it's just mind-bendingly awful. And that's before you add in all of the fourth wall breaks. In fact, you can't even call them fourth wall breaks because it just leaves them as rubble on the ground when you're actually talking to the developers of the game themselves about the game that you're in, and they tell you it's just a game and that nothing makes any sense. And you can still go beyond this and find out that it does make sense within this game world that they've created. I do not understand this game. I'm not even sure if I like this game, but also, in the same sentence, I know I love this game. In fact, you know what? Why am I even bothering to try and fight this game? Just let it happen. Let your brain just drop out of your ear. Number 5, Eternal Sonata. With peace and love, God bless Eternal Sonata. I would have loved to have been in the meeting room when this pitch was just flopped out on the table. Because you can imagine this, it's just kind of like, right, so I got a great idea for a video game. It's an anime RPG. Nice, they sell really well. And it's got a cool combat mechanic that lets you just wail on enemies for a set amount of time, creating a nice layer of subtle strategy, but also some button-mashing mayhem. Wow, if I wasn't sitting down already, I would be knocked onto my ass. And I want all of the characters in this game to be based on Frédéric Chopin's music, and the world that you're adventuring in is actually his dying throes of a fever dream. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, fever dream where he's dying of tuberculosis. Well, at least it's unique. And that's how the game got made. As you might expect from a setting that is literally forming from a man's last thrashings against the night, the story of Eternal Sonata is wild and often nonsensical. Now, you could well argue that it doesn't need to make sense, as the emotional weight of this tale still hits hard, and I'll totally agree with you on that one. But when you end the game on his character still living on past his death, seemingly now given agency to exist in a world made of music, you have to take a step back and just say, what the f*** just happened? Still though, great game, and in fact, it's given inspiration for today's musical interlude. James and Jazz, are you ready, my friends?
Yes.
Well, good, because what I want you to do right now is go and get an orchestra, and I want you to get all of the works of Frédéric Chopin and turn them into one singular melody.
I think you meant medley, but okay.
And then I want you to bit crush it all into like an 8-bit thing and then re-unbit it to a 16-bit, double it, subtract half, and then go back to an 8-bit again because I didn't like the sound of the first one. He's gone, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's gone.
Yep, okay, cool. Right, well, I guess I'll have to do this one then. Number 4, Resonance of Fate. So weirdly enough, Resonance of Fate may well be one of my favourite RPGs, and say it with me, kids, of all time, but it is also a game that I understand so little of. What pulled me through the 40 to 50 hour title was its impeccable combat, which focuses on acrobatic tricks and positioning to chip away at enemies' health before unleashing a full anime choreographed bullet ballet to land the killing blow. Plus, it has got some of the weirdest character moments in any game that I've ever witnessed. For example, James, if you can get around the YouTube legality of this, play the clip of The Raisins. You're welcome, everyone.
Full ripe grapes need fertile soil. We have our raisins. No!
What were they thinking? It's a shame then that while the combat and characters are soaring overhead, the plot is scraping its arse against the floor like a dirty dingle dog. Now, what I want you to do right here is put your hands up, right, and then just pop it down again when I lose you with the plot, okay? Right, so James Jazz, you play this game as well. So the game takes place in a city that has risen above a now polluted surface and is ruled over by those at the very tippy top of the spire called the Cardinals. These lazy, fat, rich idiots decide to build an AI that will help with population control that's kind of like Logan's Run, and the AI goes rogue, because of course it does, and it's your mission to battle through the city and unplug this glorified car battery. So far, so simple-ish, right? Well, it's about to get worse, because we're going to add in a church that both worships and wants to destroy the AI, child soldiers who are programmed to be resistant to the polluted stuff that's down on the floor, except sometimes they're not, except sometimes they are, and sometimes they go crazy, and sometimes they don't. And then on top of this, you've got a guy who absolutely is literally in love with the AI to the point that he starts creating facets of it that allow him to live forever, except when they don't, because he actually believes in a god above the AI that's actually powered by faith, and that means that the AI that he's created with all of his friends and he worships isn't actually his true god, but he actually believes in the one beyond it. And that's what keeps him alive, except it doesn't sometimes, except it does sometimes. And then the group decides that after battling him again and again and again, they realise that he is invincible because of his faith and decide to literally let the bad guy go and go live on the ground floor. That's the ground floor where everything's polluted and they don't die. What the is going on? Yeah, it doesn't make much sense no matter how many times you play through this game, and making matters worse, this convoluted storyline was actually something that Sega was aware of because they forced the studio making it to finish the game early and to roll in elements of a planned sequel because they weren't confident that the game would sell well enough to justify another installment. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, the convoluted nature of the narrative made sure that the game absolutely tanked when it came to sales, thus dooming it to just be a one and done experience. And what an experience it is. Number 3, the Kingdom Hearts franchise. I think that we all knew that this was going to make the list, right? I mean, the memes about the Kingdom Hearts narrative are so strong, they are powerful, yeah! But I'm actually going to take a different approach here because I'm not going to complain about what is being told in the Kingdom Hearts narrative, but actually the way that it's delivered. That's right, I'm defending this game as I deride it, because Kingdom Hearts as a story is not actually that complicated, but like I say, the way it tells this tale about darkness, hearts and friendship truly is. This is because there are just so many damn Kingdom Hearts games and each one of them is so bloody long, and when you've got a narrative that is as simple as the darkness is bad, stop it however you can, this means that you have to add in turns, twists and unnecessary characters by the boatload in order to pad things out. And this means that the real confusion of these games comes from how much there is to remember at any given point, even if most of it just boils down to generic goals of good and evil. And making matters worse is that in some of these games, narrative exposition and some pretty considerable plot points are considered to be collectibles. For some reason, Square Enix thought it would be a great idea to hide character biographies, motivations, entire sub-stories in collectibles, and then punish us for not knowing what's going on. In short, this is not a dumb series, but the way it delivers its narrative definitely is. Number 2, Death Stranding. I think if one were to look up the definition of cheeky whippet in the dictionary, you'd be presented with a picture of Hideo Kojima's face, because he loves having a gas with and at his audience. From pulling the rug out from under us with the reveal of Raiden as the central character over Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 2, to pretty much every interaction with Johnny the Soldier, he just loves having a laugh at his audience and shattering their preconceived notions of what a video game can be. That being said, maybe somebody should be hired to tell him no every once in a while, because when it came to Death Stranding, we saw that having the reins be fully taken off and having no studio meddling whatsoever actually resulted in one of the most convoluted and completely dissonant narratives I've ever witnessed. In an effort to make a new genre of games, Kojima threw everything at the wall, but then he took the wall and then threw it at another wall and repeated the process again and again and again until he stood amidst the rubble of countless ideas and then just said to himself, Wait a minute, what was I doing again? This can be the only explanation as to why we got such a disconnected and absolutely mad plot in Death Stranding. And before you come at me and say, hey, I'm going to try and explain it to you, my friend, this plot does not make sense. And you want to know why I can say that so completely 100% assuredly? It's because in an interview with VG247, Hideo Kojima said himself, I don't even understand my game. How the hell were we meant to understand things when the creative director behind it didn't himself? I rest my case. And number 1, Killer 7. Right, now, Killer 7 is a true and blue bastard of a video game. It is at once exceptional, off the wall, and Suda51 operating on a completely another level, but it is also a game that kind of acts like it's standing behind you when you're completing a very difficult puzzle. And the puzzle is like a picture of clouds, right? Very difficult, and the shapes of the puzzle pieces are indeed clouds, so it's taken you hours, days, weeks even, and it's standing behind you, eerily close to the back of your ear, just breathing heavily, distracting you ever so slightly, and you just want to be, what are you doing? But as you put the final piece in, it reaches over and swipes the entire thing off the table and loses some of the other pieces and eats the rest, and then goes up to you and says, you weren't even close to understanding what's going on, you pig! Like I say, it's a true bastard of a game. Trying to nail down a concrete timeline of events in this game is next to impossible, and this is by design, as the game actually operates on different levels of existence and meaning, jumping freely between them at any given moment and not even caring if the player joins it. The basic plot, if you can call it that, is that a new terrorist organisation called Heaven's Smile is attacking locations around the world in order to destabilise Western authority and give power back to Japan. However, those leading the group are themselves being controlled by a Buddhist demon, and only 7 assassins with the power to see invisible exploding terrorists will be able to stop said demon. This is about as much of the game that you can say is certifiably true, and even then it's stretching it a little bit. Because everything from its characters who may or may not even be real, to the villains who spout esoteric monologues that lead absolutely nowhere, and the fact that the game tells you occasionally that there's no point in fighting as light and darkness must be allowed to exist equally, there seems to be so many strings that it completely knots together and beats you over the head to death with it. I will say, hand on heart, that I have no idea what is going on in this game. And you know what? I think that is what is meant to be the point of it, that the socio and political machinations that exist beyond our remit as just mere workarounds are just far beyond our control and even our understanding sometimes, making us pretty afraid of what's going on behind closed doors. I think that's the message. I think. Woo! And those were 8 convoluted video game narratives that nobody understands. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below, as well as popping in your suggestion for next week's episode. My friends. And if you'd like to chat to me with peace and love, Ringo Starr style, then you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, or you can swing by Instagram at RetroJ with a 0 _ Instagram. No, it's just Insta. Yeah. I do all of my Warhammer painting there, and it'd be great to share them with you, except the one that I just dropped. Nyal Stormcaller, in pieces. Goody, gum, bloody drops. Anyway, before I go, I just want to say one thing. Sometimes in life, our own narratives, our own life story can be difficult to comprehend and see where we're going, especially when there's lots of choices and overwhelming questions coming our way. But I'm just going to tell you, my friends, that it is okay to not know where your future lies. In fact, that is part of the fun, to go out and explore and try new things. But I understand that it can be overwhelming sometimes to feel like you don't have choice in your own life, but I assure you, you do. You are in control of your life. Only you can say what you do and how you go about doing it, and do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, okay, my friend? You are a big ledge, you deserve all the best things in life, and I want you to go out there and absolutely smash it, okay? Big love from me to you. As always, I've been Jules, you have been awesome, never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon.